So as Richard said, what I want to do today is try to join up what I've spent my last 3 years doing, which is worrying about how to make a success out of smart metering, with what's an important part of my role at the minute, looking at the retail market and how to make that really work for consumers. So if I start off by looking to the future and thinking about our vision for the sort of market that we want to see when smart metering is really rolled out. We're talking about a market in the future where consumers really are empowered in terms of having much more information about their energy usage that enables them to think about how they engage in the market, how they best use their energy and the choices that they make. That they're engaged, that we have a market that offers much more choice. As Ian alluded to earlier, I think at the minute the market is pretty well focused just around price. I think what we want to see in the future is a market enabled by smart, where customers are looking at a much wider range of aspects that will drive their energy choices, whether it's the kind of new smart prepayment services and pay-as-you-go services that we were talking about earlier, new methods for budgeting tools, more information about how you're using your energy and how you can engage in energy efficiency, whether it's the ability to participate in the new demand side services, offering some of your load up to help manage more intermittent generation, whether it's tools that will help you with your smartphone app to manage your heating controls remotely and have that as a part of your energy offering. So things from getting the basic bits of customer service right, which smart helps, through to really much more innovative services. And I think if we can do then, that starts to get consumers more engaged in their energy usage. We're not going to be at the world, that, as Ian said, where it's like having entertainment over your energy system, but it's not going to be as exciting perhaps as your mobile phone apps, but it will be a market in which consumers are much more engaged and beginning to think about how they can contribute to playing their part in that very different world that we need to be in if we're going to meet some of the bigger energy challenges we have of a sustainable and secure energy market. And if consumers are more empowered and more engaged, then our vision is that that is what drives suppliers to step up to the mark, to start to offer improved consumer service, to start to look at how they can reduce their costs, start to look at how they can be more innovative and be more consumer-centred. And it's with that virtuous circle of more engaged, more empowered consumers driving suppliers to be more responsive, which in turn, kind of a virtuous circle, fuels more consumer engagement. That's that vision that we're really striving to get to as we move forwards. But we're a long way from that at the minute. And Julie talked at the beginning about the kind of things that had prompted us to kick off our retail market review. And we start off, perhaps the chart on the left shows the pattern of price rises over recent years. Well, we all know that prices have been rising as a result very largely of what's happening in the wholesale market and global pressures on those underlying fuel costs. But the point that was made earlier about all of the price rises tending to happen at the same time is really shown by that chart. And while I take the point that, the umbrella goes up means it's raining, I think it's not a case of wholesale prices went up by 10% 2 weeks ago and now all suppliers are responding. It has been a progression of increasing pressure on underlying costs. So it's not necessarily the case that all suppliers will have the same hedging strategy and choose to respond to those price pressures at the same time. I think in a competitive market, we'd expect to see a little bit more divergence in terms of the approach that suppliers take and how they manage some of those underlying cost pressure challenges. And then on the right-hand chart, again, what we found when we were looking at the market was the big difference in the margins that are earned by suppliers in their single fuel legacy market was much higher than the margins that were being earned in the dual fuel market, and the lowest being for single fuel customers who are switching around. Now, at one level, that's not surprising. In many markets, the economists would tell us, and Stephen Littlechild does regularly, that margins, you will expect to get lower prices if you are active in the market. But one of the things about energy, this is an essential service that all customers need. We know that the customers who are most engaged tend to be the better off, the more educated, and it's therefore a real concern for us when what we see is the customers who are being left behind, where margins have historically been the highest, are often the most vulnerable in society. So it's really important for us to look at that and make sure that all customers are seeing the benefits of competition. When we look then at, again, what consumers were saying about the state of the market, and we're in a position now where currently customers are really very disengaged. 70% of customers hadn't switched last year, and a significant number have not ever switched. And some of the reasons for that are about 60% of customers telling us that they found that there are just too many tariffs out there, and that they find the complexity overwhelming. And again, there's also the issue of trust that Eunice talked us through earlier. Customers just don't believe that they will get a better deal if they switch, and that other suppliers' prices will quickly follow. So we've got a market where we've only got a very small number of engaged and proactive customers. The data for this chart was showing only 5 to 10% proactive customers, and a number who are reactive or passive. And a lot of that was in an era where we still had doorstep selling, and that was probably quite a big driver of a lot of customers engaging in the market. There was the decision that we announced this morning about the problems we found a few years ago with Scottish Power's approach to marketing, and many of those customers were not actually getting a better deal out of that switching process. So the points I was just making about consumers feeling that there were too many tariffs, it was too complicated, and trust generally being at an all-time low. So not a good basis from which to achieve our vision and to secure the rollout of smart metering, which is why we then, this is the kind of the opposite of the virtuous circle I described at the beginning, was that vicious circle where you've got disengaged customers, so suppliers under much less pressure to respond and to really step up to the mark, able to exploit the sticky customers that they had in their incumbent marketplace, which drove reductions in trust and confidence in the market, leading to more disengaged customers. So we have a sort of spiral of downward competitive pressure, which we really need to kind of turn around if we're going to get that engine of competition that I talked about working properly. I think it's fair to say we're not unique. This is a quote from David Kay in a recent Financial Times article. He was talking about hotels and car hire after some appalling experiences he'd had on holiday, and all the different add-ons that he was finding being put onto his bill after he'd made his choices. But what this highlights is that the problems around tariff complexity are not unique to our market, but we are trying to tackle them through our retail market review. So Julie talked earlier about the kind of broad pillars, and I suspect many of you will be familiar with it, but it's what we're put in place through our retail market review about a simpler, clearer, fairer market. So firstly, in terms of simpler tariffs for customers, our proposals, as you know, put a cap on the number 4 core tariffs per supplier to reduce the number of choices that customers face in the market and make it easier to navigate. We're outlawing the kind of 2-tier tariffs that customers have historically found very complicated, and I suspect all of us in this room would struggle to work out what our bill was off the back of the kind of 2-tier tariffs where you pay a certain pence per kilowatt hour for the first number of units and then more after that, or less after that. So moving to a simpler standing charge plus unit rate structure. And also, in terms of simpler tariffs, getting rid of some of those what one might call temptations in the market, which again, Julie alluded to this morning, the fact that we're outlawing the kind of cashback upfront, which can be very persuasive in getting customers to engage in the market. Our behavioural insight work shows that customers always put a high value on kind of what they get now, but that can lead them to ultimately make bad choices about what is the best long-term deal. So it might be good at getting customers to engage, but it often leads to poor choices. So again, we've outlawed those kind of tariff structures, and also things that tie customers in with a kind of promise of a large cashback at the end of a period, which can be a distortion on the kind of willingness to switch. So that's the kind of bit about creating simpler tariffs. As we've talked about earlier, there is a tension here about the desire to see innovation and new tariffs in the market that will get customers to engage versus the simplicity that we felt we needed to introduce to kind of reset the market in a world where consumers were just feeling overwhelmed by the choices that were there. So we've tried to find that balance, and at the minute we've gone with a strong focus on getting the simplicity in there. But we have made, there is room within the rules for time of use tariffs for smart metering. There is room for suppliers to apply for derogations for particular, whether a particular kind of specialist tariffs that they feel meet a real consumer need. So we've tried to get that balance and leave a little bit of room for some innovation, but whilst really resetting the market at this stage to help consumers re-engage. So the second pillar about the clearer information, new rules about clarity about information which must be put onto bills to make them clearer and easier for customers to understand. The requirement that when suppliers issue notices about changes in tariffs, they must explain to customers what that means for them in pounds and pence, which is the only language that customers understand. The requirement for suppliers to give customers information about their cheapest tariff on a regular basis, and a set of new tools to help customers compare across the market. So the TCR, the tariff comparison rate, which is a bit like the APR that you get on loans, but then also personal projections that allow customers to really understand specific tariffs and what that means for their particular situation and their levels of usage. So those tools, which we believe will be really important in helping consumers to re-engage and feel that they can understand what's happening in the market. And then the third pillar about a fairer market. One of the things that we've introduced and has already come into force during the summer is new standards of conduct for the suppliers, where they have to ensure that they are honest and professional in the way that they deal with the customers, and that all information that they provide is clear and not misleading. So those are very broad-arching standards of conduct, broad-ranging obligations, backed by our ability to impose financial penalties if suppliers are not stepping up to the mark. But then in addition to those broad obligations, we've also introduced and come into force tomorrow, so it's been the focus of quite a bit of the media that's been going around this morning, specific requirements around areas where we felt that suppliers were not treating customers fairly in the way that they handled fixed term deals. So two specific new changes that come into force tomorrow. A ban on any rollovers of fixed-term deals. So when your fixed-term deal ends, you have to be put onto an evergreen tariff. You can't simply be rolled over onto a new fixed-term tariff. And also, fixed means fixed. So if you sign up to a 2-year deal and you're going to be tied into that, then the supplier cannot then put up the price halfway through, which at the minute is possible and happens with some of the kind of tracker tariffs where you're guaranteed a price that's a certain amount below the standard tariff. Those sort of deals where customers are tied in but can still see prices increased, again, will be outlawed. So if you sign up to a fixed term deal, you know that you've got certainty about the price that you're going to be offered. So with those 3 pillars, we're looking to really as I say, reset the market, an essential first step to kind of getting us into a place that we can build on and start to introduce the more exciting and innovative kind of offers that we will need to make our smarter markets vision work, but which at this stage customers would find just too overwhelming, I think. The RMR is an essential first step towards getting us to that smarter markets vision, but it's not all we need to do. And within Ofgem, we've got Smarter Markets programme that's looking at the range of other things that we need to do to start to make that vision a reality. So we're looking at the change of supplier process and how having smart metering can really transform that process, but also looking at what can be done short term to actually speed things up and go back to the theme of this conference. I mean, an important element around customer service, making that change of supplier process more reliable and giving customers confidence that it won't drag on and you won't get 40 letters and 10 SMSs as Eunice was talking about. So change of supplier, a really critical piece. Settlement reform, we have a situation at the minute, as you may know, where customers are, the settlement process works on a profiled basis, so that even if a supplier manages to get customers to shift their usage away from the peak, the suppliers don't benefit from that in terms of their purchasing of wholesale energy in the settlement process, because it will still be assumed that the customer is still following that average profile. So if we're going to get the incentives there for customers, for suppliers to start to innovate and offer those more exciting time of use tariffs and get customers engaged and playing their part in the demand side process, then we need to reform settlement. And again, that's one of the strands of our work. And then finally, looking more generally at consumer protection and empowerment and what that means in a smart world, so that we can be confident customers do have the information they need to make those more complicated choices where you've got time of use tariffs and so on. So bringing it together, RMR, in my view, is an essential first step if we're to achieve that vision of a more dynamic market in which we've got engaged consumers looking at much more innovative and exciting range of products. And it's about rebuilding that trust so that we've and engagement and understanding so that we've got a more effective competition. Been questions raised about how we're going to judge the success of RMR, and I think it's worth saying, we will be doing annual assessments of the market going forward to just look at what's happening and how RMR is impacting the market. And in headline terms, our tests for whether or not RMR is a success will be looking both at the demand side, doing some extensive consumer research to look at the impact that we're having on consumer trust and understanding and confidence in engaging in the market. But we'll also be looking at the impact that we're having on competition, what's happening in terms of the various measures of competitive pressure. We're looking at switching, but switching isn't the only indicator. What really matters is that customers, it's the threat of switching that holds suppliers to account. If they know that if they don't step up to the mark, if they don't give good customer service, if they know that they're at risk of losing customers, then that should be driving their competitive response and their desire and hunger to give customers good service, to manage their costs efficiently and to keep prices in check. So looking both at what consumers are doing and also looking at the state of the market. Looking at what's happening in terms of new entry, and what's happening, as Ramsey said, to look in 18 months' time, what's happened to the current new entrants and whether there are any more new entrants. All of those are important signs of how effectively competition is working. So our aim with RMR, we should be resetting the market. We want consumers to be engaged and ready to enter the new world that smart metering brings. We've committed to have a full review of the RMR proposals by 2017, and I have to say I personally would be quite disappointed if by that stage we're not able to lift some of those shackles and move to a market that has more innovation and can accommodate more innovation to respond to the new and exciting opportunities that smart presents. And it's only when we get there that smart metering that provides, hopefully RMR will have turned the wheel round and we'll have more engaged consumers driving greater pressure on suppliers. And then with smart, you get another injection into that to really bring in some new, exciting, innovative offers and to further accelerate that cycle of competitive pressure, driving more engaged consumers, which drives more competitive pressure on suppliers and gets us to that world that we need to get to if we're to meet the ambitions for a low carbon and secure energy supply. We need consumers engaged. We need the demand side to play a part of that. So we need that competitive process to be working.
Thank you very much, Maxine.